Just another billionaires' battle of egos? Or does the $150 billion lawsuit that pits Elon Musk against Sam Altman go to the heart of how artificial intelligence could determine the future of humanity? We'll ask about the origin story of OpenAI, founded by some of Silicon Valley's leading luminaries as a non-profit organization that would put innovation at the service of a socially responsible AI that wouldn't destroy the planet, the growing pains, and the fallouts that followed, leading up to the launch of ChatGPT and OpenAI's alliance with Microsoft. Is there an air of inevitability in this tale of ambition? Is it human nature that profit eventually comes before safety, particularly when investors want a return on their record sums that they've put in? A ruling in California against Altman could scuttle the transformation of OpenAI from nonprofit to publicly traded company. Now, we've seen this movie before, literally. The 2010 film, The Social Network, chronicled the ambitions and betrayals surrounding the rise of Facebook. Since then, the stakes have risen exponentially. Gone are the days when tech titans mused about effective altruism. The big question, does the rest of the planet watch passively as the United States moves towards less, not more regulation? This at the dawn of an era where machines are already upending the way we work, think, and live. Today in the France 24 debate, it's Musk versus Altman. With us from Haarlem in the Netherlands, former member of the European Parliament, Marietta Schaake, fellow at Stanford University, and the author of The Tech Coup, How to Save Democracy from Silicon Valley. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Silicon Valley, where tech entrepreneur Tariq Krim used to hang his hat. He's now the publisher of Tech and Geopolitics, a newsletter, cybernetica.fr. Welcome back to the show.
Welcome. Thanks you.
Bernard Benamou, Secretary General of the Institute of Digital Sovereignty. You've just published your latest study. It is entitled Artificial Intelligence, Challenges and Prospects for Human Rights in Europe. Welcome back. You can always listen, that's right, listen to the France 24 debate wherever podcasts are streamed. No cameras allowed in the courtroom for this one. Instead, it's, well, stakeout time outside the federal court in Oakland, California. Spotted from afar, we can perhaps show you pictures of the main protagonists. Some thumbs up from both Elon Musk and Sam Altman. Maybe we'll show you those images later. More on the stakes of the trial with Juliette Brown.
Opening statement, Elon Musk took a jab at OpenAI and his friend-turned-foe, Sam Altman, saying, "If we make it okay to loot a charity, the entire foundation of charitable giving in America will be destroyed." The case centers on the transformation of OpenAI from a non-profit lab to a capitalistic venture. For its part, OpenAI says Musk wants power and is not focused on AI safety.
The hurdle we think we need to get over is just to present the truth here. We've got a story about what happened that is consistent with the facts, it's consistent with the documents, and we just want the jury to see that. And we think any fair jury will understand our position, and we think they'll side with us, and we think we've got a jury that'll do that.
Musk, who co-founded OpenAI in 2015, is accusing Altman and OpenAI president Greg Brockman of having broken the company's founding charter by transforming it into a for-profit business now valued at $852 billion. The trial has also become a flashpoint for broader protests around AI and fears over the potential implications of the technology.
They have stated and run ad campaigns that they want to replace workers with machines, and then will have built the tools to oppress us for complaining about it.
Musk is claiming $134 billion in damages, the ousting of Altman and Brockman, an end to ties between OpenAI and its major shareholder Microsoft, and the reversal of the company's recent shift towards a for-profit model. The verdict is set to be announced on May the 18th.
Musk, who is peddling his own AI Grok model. Tariq Krim, without going over the list of everything that Elon Musk wants out of this trial, who's got the stronger case here?
It's hard to say because both of them basically want to create profitable company out of something that was supposed to be originally an open project. Don't forget that AI truly started when Google published this paper, attention, all you need. And suddenly with the technology called the transformers, the T of GPT, we were able to build incredible value over AI. And when
was this?
That was maybe 10 years, less than 10 years ago. And what happened is that at the time, it was about research and long-term vision about what we could do. And suddenly you could build tools like ChatGPT. And when ChatGPT was unveiled to the world, you remember how insane the world went because it was exactly the kind of technology
it seems like a million years ago, but it was the end of 2022.
Absolutely. And so basically the vision at the time was we'll look at forward thinking, and suddenly it became very concrete. And the moment in Silicon Valley you have a product, doesn't matter if you're a public or open company, you want to build a software. Remember, years ago, there was an open project called Mosaic. It was the first browser. What happened is Mark Andreessen left to create Netscape, the first company. So every time you have a product, you have companies who want to fight over it. And I think behind that, what Musk and Sam Altman wants is to have the control over these products.
Control over the products is what they want. Tell you about the case. The judge has expressed annoyance at the plaintiff's penchant for tweeting during the trial. After all, he owns Twitter, X. Like we can show you this one from Monday from Elon Musk. He writes, Scam Altman, that's how he's calling him, and Greg Stockman, that's the number 2 of OpenAI, stole a charity, full stop. Covering the case for news site The Verge, Elizabeth Lopato wrote of the dangers of telling the court how dangerous it is to tell a courtroom, I don't lose my temper just before you lose your cool, which is what happened. On cross-examination, Musk would barely even explain how much he bothered to learn about OpenAI's operations before suing them a few years later. Bernard Benamou, listening to Tariq Krim, there are no good guys in this story.
Indeed, there are not. And when I hear about ethics and charity being spoiled by Elon Musk, it sounds really bizarre. It sounds weird. No, honestly, it's a clash of titans who want to dominate this huge industry for the future. You ask about, is there any possibility of one really winning over the other? I don't know. Most experts say that it will be a long and difficult process, and there will be appeal, maybe even a Supreme Court decision at some point about non-profit and so on. Whatever, I don't believe that at this moment, you mentioned the history of Facebook and many other companies in the Valley, I don't think judges will destroy a rising star like OpenAI at this moment. I don't think that's the trend of the Trump administration, even with his own people at the DOJ. I don't think they want to destroy that, even if indeed he has connection with, he had connection with Trump in the past. I don't think that's probability that he will win all the capitulation that you mentioned, the more than 100 billion, no IPO and so on. No, it's exactly what he is doing is trying to buy time for his own IPO to happen, because he is merging XAI with SpaceX in what could be one of the largest IPO ever, 1.3 trillion, I've heard. So basically, it's about time and being the first to be able to imprint the market.
Yeah, and imprinting the market is what we've seen, but in the wrong way in the last couple of days. Microsoft stock down 6%. Remember, they're the other defendant in this case. The amounts of money needed for AI are off the scales. Tech stocks started to fall Wednesday after the Wall Street Journal reported that OpenAI missed key revenue user targets in its sprint towards the IPO that Bernard was mentioning, while the company's CFO and board have questioned the wisdom of massive data center spending in the face of a slowing growth. Marietta Schaka, there's a real economy out there, and the question is, does AI suck up all the capital in the market, or does it have to revise downward its ambitions?
Well, there's not only an economy out there, there's a society out there. And I think that that's often forgotten when we see these battles of titans, these billionaires, PR catering through this trial towards their own goals like IPOs, etc. And so I think it's a very cynical game that I worry about from a societal point of view. And I think the fact that we don't even know the details of what went down at OpenAI with such consequential decisions about whether it was for profit or not is absurd. It really points to a broader lack of transparency, while these billionaires are taking huge gambles, financial, but also societally, with the future of so many people, whether it's the impact on work, on the environment, on national security, on civil liberties. And so I think it's another reminder that we shouldn't leave so much power to such few corporate actors.
And yet, if you roll back the clock, not 10 years, not 5 years, but 1 year to the AI summit that took place here in Paris, Sam Altman was the star attraction. At one point, he was asked whether he would sell OpenAI to Musk. Here's what he had to say.
I actually consider myself unemployed by AI. I used to work as a software engineer, and it came for those jobs first, actually.
All right, apologies for that technical mishap. We'll try to play that clip of Sam.
No, OpenAI has a mission. We are an unusual organization, and we have this mission of making AGI benefit all of humanity. And we are here to do that. We are not for sale.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Marietta Schaake, again, that was a little over a year ago, and it was at the Grand Palais here in Paris. We were, Sam Altman today still has that rock star status, and you were talking about accountability a moment ago. Your reaction to that clip about how he was saying a year ago that we have the mission of making AGI benefit all of humanity.
Sure. I mean, that sounds like a great promise, but it also is meant to and used to ask for significant sacrifices from all of us in the meantime. So we hear grandiose promises about, solving the climate crisis, solving cancer, solving the energy scarcity. And this is then supposed to happen over time, while in the meantime, we see that there's increased carbon footprints, lots of use of electricity and other scarce resources, water, rare earth minerals, towards this whole AI industry. And we're also beginning to see friction with people in communities. Lots of questions among recently graduated students with, highly valued educational degrees that wonder, do we still get jobs? Questions about who should decide on highly impactful models like the Mythos model that Anthropic recently released. And so we constantly hear these promises about societal benefit and about great impact that would indeed be revolutionary, while in the intermediate, we see a lot of challenges. And so I think it's important that politicians also get involved and in Europe give this higher priority so that we can do AI our own way and define a much more societally anchored success story of what AI looks like, because success for Sam Altman does not mean success for all of us.
On that score, Tariq Krim, there is one AI champion here in France. It's called Mistral. Yes. Like the Chinese DeepSeek, they are more of an open source kind of model. Is that the answer to just encourage a European champion?
Yes, there is. But when we were talking about, Bernard was talking about IPOs. Actually, we have 3 major AI IPOs happening potentially this year. You have SpaceX, who's now merging with AI, merging with everything. Elon Musk, it's a way, but actually is considering looking at Mistral. There was some hearsays last week. Then you have OpenAI.
Is it serious?
It was in the press. You never know. The thing is, and you know, there's a moment where you're at the peak of your value and you should sell, and there's a moment where you can believe you can grow and have significant time to grow. The question is open for everybody, and the reason that every of these companies, so SpaceX, XAI, OpenAI, but also Anthropic, who raised a lot of money, is now becoming the superstar, are all trying to IPO before potentially, the growth start to slow down. Because if you think about it, what's fascinating is, because on one side you have the Chinese models are free, or basically use them. A lot of companies, including in the US and in France, are using Chinese model because they're way cheaper. The question is, you could question how they're built and what kind of values they have embedded. But my point is that during the course of the last 3 years, you mentioned 2022, the ChatGPT, the AI models have changed. The value was in the chatbots, and it was how to build a chatbot like ChatGPT or Claude. And then what happened is we moved from chats to agent, meaning software that do things for you. So instead of asking a question, you say, oh, can you help me build, let's say, a Word document? And it's going to write the document and set it up for you. So you have this kind of action. And Claude, the product from Anthropic, became the leader of that space. And what we're seeing right now, when you were mentioning Sarah Friar, the CFO of OpenAI, what is happening right now is that Anthropic, that used to be the original team of OpenAI, they left for many reasons we still don't really know. It's about ethics, but it's also that I don't think one thing we know about all these tech CEOs, they all hate each other. They cannot be in the same room. They can't
let me ask you about that. Let me ask you
Yeah.
about that, because again, we promised to talk a little bit about this origin story,
Yes.
and you know some of these players yourself. In the fall of 2023, we talked about it here with you. Sam Altman was fired. It stunned the world. Just again after that launch of ChatGPT, and then he was rehired within the same week under pressure from investors. The origin of that story: OpenAI's then chief scientist Ilya Sutskever sent secret memos to the board questioning the integrity of Altman and his second in command, Greg Brockman. After Sutskever grew more distressed about AI safety, he compiled memos about Altman and Brockman. The New Yorker, writing about them, they have since taken on a legendary status in Silicon Valley. In some circles, they're simply called the Ilya memos. Meanwhile, Amodei, this is the boss of Anthropic, was continuing to assemble notes. Neither collection of documents contains a smoking gun. Rather, they recount an accumulation of alleged deceptions and manipulations, each of which might in isolation be greeted with a shrug. Sutskever concluded that this kind of behavior does not create an environment conductive to the creation of safe artificial intelligence models.
Yes, the question is simple. The problem with AI is when you used to raise hundreds of millions to do product in the cloud as the technology before, a mobile. Now you have hundreds of billions because you need to
build. So you've gone from millions to billions.
Yes, and we need to build data centers. We're talking about how now data centers are flourishing. I think there's 1,600 data centers opening up all around the US and North America. They need electricity. We don't know where it's coming from. We need to take it from somewhere. They need water. They need a lot of things. And you need to buy chips. That's why NVIDIA is the most profitable company in the world. But my point is that the pressure from investors, we will never know really what happened with Sam Altman. There was some articles, people say. The difference, by the way, between Dario and Sam is that Dario is a proper AI engineer, when Sam Altman is a professional CEO who worked on several companies and Y Combinator. But the thing is, the pressure from revenues to be built is enormous. And the only way these companies can actually recoup on the money is to basically break, I would say almost destroy, a part of the jobs created. Because what happened with the previous generation, the software was supposed to make some of the jobs less, I would say, necessary. But in this case, now with AI, they usually talk about maybe 30% of the job being unnecessary. So you don't only replace the software, you replace the software and the people who use the software. So to recoup the money they're hoping to do with, I would say, I think it's about we're talking about $1 trillion valuation for IPOs. I mean, something completely insane when you think about it. The result will be so important, so enormous in terms of jobs and revenues. And I don't know if they can make it. And they're trying to.
You don't know if they can make it.
I mean,
nobody knows.
Nobody knows. But
nobody knows. Most people think it's a circular economy, and I wanted to join the words of Mariette about the social risks, the political impact, the danger for society. Just now was mentioned the social dangers, with the possibility of destroying in a first time, maybe later create new jobs, create new kind of activities. But in the first moment, it's mainly destroying. The creative destruction is about creating something after. But for now, we see the destruction, not sure to see exactly where the creation lies.
So it's not like when the automobile replaces the horse?
No, we don't know exactly. It's an important debate for our society, and especially for democratic society, on the long-term prospects of AI in our societies. Is it really helping develop a new kind of economy? Like you mentioned, the car becoming used for transportation, becoming used for every single activity, or will it become a way to pressure a large amount of people to become less useful? And that's why it's not surprising that Elon Musk and a few others are advocating for the universal basic income, because they consider it will be impossible for all to have work. Is it the kind of society we want? There is another thinker that I guess you know, Kate Crawford, who said AI is politics by other means, because in a way it has a tremendous power that never ever any technology, even the internet technology itself, has. So at this moment, the real question is, do we want to let those people who have, how could you say that, ethically challenged, to become the master of the universe? And that's precisely what a certain Vladimir Putin was saying a few years ago, when he said the country which will be leading the AI revolution will be leading the world. Is it what we want? Is that? No. We want those technology to be useful for the development of our values. And when I say our values, I will specifically target European values about human rights. That's what we have been writing about in our study. But it's globally a system with no interference from foreign states. At this moment, we Europeans are using technology massively outside of Europe. And at this moment, 3 empires, meaning China, Russia, and the US, have a common interest in destroying the European Union and, in a way, European values as well. Do we want that to happen or not? Is AI becoming instrumental in those interference, political interference, economical interference in the future? That's the real question for us, is that it's not looking at the titans fighting and devouring each other and looking passively about that. No, we have to take part. We have to take sides, not for one or the other, but for the interest of the development and the pursuing our own values and own systems.
All right, so Mariette Schaake, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't wave a magic wand and make AI go away. It's here. It's here to stay. So what do? You heard earlier Tariq Krim describe the sums that are needed to compete with the giants of Silicon Valley. What's the other way?
Well, it's true that the giants in Silicon Valley are taking a huge gamble with all of us, with their own resources and reputations, but with huge societal impact. And besides the concentration through the way the tech platforms, the AI platforms are built, the concentration of power in the hands of a couple of CEOs, we have the other dimension of the Trump administration that wants AI as a tool for US dominance in the world. That's literal policy in the AI action plan. And so as Europeans, I think we have, multiple layers of forces that are working against our interests. Indeed, having economic impact, having security impact, having democratic impact. And so what I think Europeans should do is build AI that works from our people's point of view. And it doesn't have to be copy-paste from Silicon Valley. We can do it our own way, much more trust-based, much more secure by design, and also open and democratically governed. I don't believe that we have seen in history moments where such concentration of power has led to good outcomes. So I think power needs countervailing powers.
This is an important point. And just explain for our viewers, you use the word open. Explain why this notion of open source is important.
It's important because it allows for much more participation and access by more people. Think not only about Europeans who need open source models, but also about people in the global south, for example. So one way to look at an antidote to these highly concentrated, capital-intensive, resource-intensive handful of AI companies in the US is to see how you can make them more open, more transparent, and more democratically governed. So really, to make sure that AI takes a proportionate place in our society, and that we, meaning citizens through their democratically elected governments, through checks and balances, accountability, stay in charge. And indeed, that we don't see these outcomes that were just sketched before, where we are steered economically in an intransparent manner, steered democratically. The algorithms of our social media platforms are already infused with values that really build up our public debate, steer people in certain directions, learn things about citizens as consumers to sell them things, but also as citizens to maybe influence their voting or their other behaviors. These are highly consequential technologies. And so it is important that Europe carves out a much more powerful position for itself. We cannot be naive. We need to understand the power dynamics here. And it requires more geopolitically anchored political leadership. And I think Europe should focus on building alternatives, not discussions about more or less regulation, not discussions about which CEO we trust most, but about sort of raw self-interest preservation for us Europeans.
Tariq Krim, how do you make citizens make the rules instead of investors?
Well, we're going to see, because first of all, I think Marie talked about a gamble, and it is a gamble. I think the reason why a lot of this happened is there's very close to no government check on this. Mm-hmm. They had free reign to get money. Elon Musk was in the government while trying to raise money and trying to circumvent the law to have more data centers. Greg Brockman, who's gave $35 million to a super PAC for Trump and is associated around lobbying to make sure.
And the U.S. president took them last year on that trip to Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
To raise more money.
But I think, as everything, it seemed to be a perfect lineup. And now you have trouble. First of all, a lot of the data centers, there's pushback. They're not going to open because the local people are afraid of the price of electricity, not access to water. There's the war in Iran, as you know, right now. And the Middle East, who used to be a huge backer of its economy, has now other immediate questions to respond to. We also have the fact that basically we don't know if this bet, the technology seems amazing, but this is only a bet.
Okay, so Silicon Valley could fall on its own sword, but if it doesn't, you heard Bernard Benamou talk about the European values he'd like to see rule the making of artificial intelligence. How do you go about that?
My point is that if it breaks because it's too expensive, they actually made it too big of a bet. What I think could happen, we're on the verge of a collapse, not of the AI technology, but the infrastructure. A lot of, I think a lot of these companies who build data centers are going to run out of business. Mm. And it could be an opportunity for Europe to build. I'm a big believer in local AI that you run on your computer. Actually, for some reason, this is the bet Apple is doing. They have the latest machines, or even Google now is working on this. China has been pushing Mistral and other companies.
And again, this is open source.
It is open source. It is an AI you actually run on your computer and actually does a majority of the job. I think the question we have is, do you want to be in a subscription model where you have to pay now $200, maybe tomorrow $2,000 a month to have access to super intelligence? Or do you want to have for free with a minimum setup the same or a similar type of AI on your computer that costs pretty much nothing? This is the big question. This is what China is pushing. This is what Europe is also pushing. And against that, of course, you have these 3 or 4 large companies, because we forgot about Google, we forgot about Microsoft, who want to make sure that the next generation of subscription to replace the former ones, the Office and all the software we've been using for the last 20 years, will come to them. So there's also a battle. Don't forget, there's also a battle about who's going to get the revenues from AI. And I think beyond the models, the question is also first an economical problem. This is why I think this trial is not really about who's going to win, is who's going to have access to the bigger market.
Ben Abenamou, if you're a company that's trying to compete in the defense sector, in the healthcare sector, you go with the best, right? If the best, you have to subscribe to it.
Oh, yeah. No, the issue about the business model is essential. What we don't want in Europe, and I guess Marietta will agree with me on that, is the same story as we had with Google, sucking up or extracting private information for advertising revenue, becoming a tool for manipulation, for also interference and so on, and being a dangerous way to use the personal information of people. And that could happen, and some, including OpenAI, are thinking about inserting advertising in their systems. But at this moment, you say, we want the best. We want the best indeed. We have also to consider, and especially in Europe for European companies, the trade-off. Do we want those data to be used against us, as they are beginning to be by the Trump administration, because they can use those data against us?
So can you, if you're a European state, can you make a law that says it has to be open source and you have to give us your algorithm?
Not that radically. We can foster an ecosystem here that is functioning according to our values and our interests. We have to prevent some very sensitive data to be used by AI from China or from the US. We have not to be naive anymore, like Thierry Breton, the European Commissioner, was saying a few months ago. We have to stop being naive. We have to protect, develop, fund, and develop what Mario Draghi, the former head of the European Central Bank, a huge collective investment by the 27 of the European Union, to develop our own ecosystem, our own R&D, our own possibility of developing those technology. But at this moment, the train is not already gone. Those technologies are evolving so quickly that we don't know what will be the architecture of the future. Will it be huge data center, like Tariq mentioned, sucking up all energy, all resources? No, it's not sustainable. The current evolution, even in the US, the economists are saying it's not possible to sustain that kind of development for too long. And add to that the fact that most companies, like NVIDIA that was mentioned, are buying shares of those companies who are buying back some new chips to buy in their ecosystem. That's circular economy at its worst, because it can, you mentioned, everyone will not survive. There will be certainly some survivors. We don't know who at this time. You mentioned earlier, Tariq, you mentioned Netscape and Mosaic. Netscape was promised to be the leader of the world. It doesn't exist anymore. So basically, we don't know who is winning. And what we know is that, if I may, we as Europeans are collectively losing that game and that race, and that is not acceptable on the long run.
Very briefly, the thing is, the expression, it's too big to fail. The problem is we have now 3 or 4 companies who are way too big to fail. And the problem is, if they crash, then the downside on the economy. You know that the US economy is mostly running on fumes and AI boom. If it crashes, it's going to be a disaster. So, as Marietta,
how different is it when you have, and I'll put it to Marietta Shaka on this,
yes.
In 2008, when there was the financial crisis, there was a bailout of banks and there was a bailout of car companies. And we talked about thousands and thousands of jobs that were saved. Here, are we talking about the same scale?
Probably larger scale, actually, because it's about 61% of venture capital in the world is now going to AI. And we know that these companies are not only, buying their own products and investing in each other, but they're also borrowing on the capital markets. And so the risk will spill over into the rest of society. And I think it's important to understand when AI, as it's promised now, succeeds, there will be societal impact and unrest. But when it fails, there will also be. And so I think that's a problem because there's not really a good scenario that we can steer towards unless we radically change. And I agree that the last word about what AI will look like 5-10 years from now has not been said. And so Europe has every opportunity to do AI and other emerging technologies in a way that works for us. It won't be as resource intensive because it can't be, not for the planet, not for the investors. And so alternatives will have to be developed that are going to solve societal problems in a more proven way, not in a speculative way. And that will also see more sharing of the benefits, respect for our social contract, things that we really care about as baselines that are more important than whichever company or whichever technology. I think are principles that we need to make sure survive the AI revolution and also the AI agenda of the hegemons that are hoping to create some kind of new colonialism through AI.
And following up on what Bernard Benamou was suggesting, who pays for research and development?
Well, I mean, we can make many more public resources available, investment in higher education, making sure that companies can not only emerge, but also scale in Europe, creating ecosystems between entrepreneurship, education, and investment. The success of Silicon Valley is very much one of an ecosystem. People are close to each other and it creates something greater than the sum of the parts. We can do that our own way in Europe, but we've seen cuts in higher education. We are still failing to work across borders the way we should in Europe. The Capital Markets Union, access to capital is an ambition that I heard about when I was still in the European Parliament, and I've been out for 7 years. So I think we know what to do. We should really move from discussing to action and look at Europe from the outside in instead of from the inside out, meaning we have to understand our place in a changing world where big players are competing over our heads and where scale matters. And so we have to master this scale, together to have a significant counterweight towards the corporate, but also geopolitical powers that are otherwise going to have their zero-sum agendas dictate the lives of our people.
Tariq Karim?
Well, I agree with the idea of how we need to do our own AI with European values, but the real problem is that we need to build things. And I just want to put my builder hat for a second. The reason why China has been so successful, don't forget, they not only build AI models, but they now build the AI chips within a series of attacks from the US choke points and restriction on access. The reason of that is they created an environment that is intellectually competitive. There's different regions.
We have a Dutch giant, which is European and in chip making.
Yes, that is it's an incredible company, and so is ARM and so many. But the question is, if you want to do products, you need to have more teams involved. Right now, we have one leader, Mistral. And that is a problem because if they fail or if they get acquired by Elon Musk, that is.
You sound really nervous that Elon Musk is.
It's not that I'm not nervous. It's part of a company. When you build a company and you have a high value and potentially the market is going to be very restrictive, you rather sell. You're going to sell to someone that has access to infinite money.
Well, do you remember the French government stepped in and stopped
Dailymotion?
Dailymotion
I
from
remember.
being taken over, the rival to YouTube from being taken taken over by Yahoo.
But Yahoo, as Netscape disappeared
Would the
now.
French government step in, or would the Europeans step in and stop Mistral from
Possibly,
becoming American?
but my point is that we only have one project. We need to have more. We need to invest more in people. As you mentioned, Marie, we talked about education. We have great engineers. I have my co-founder is at OpenAI, my former co-founder. I have 5 of my former engineers working in the companies, and I know tons of people from France, Germany, the UK who work there. So the talent is not the issue. The question is, when do we start building things? Because it's one thing about talking about why the other projects are not great and the values, and I agree, but we need to invest in building things. We will only be respected if we do things. It's going to be important for our own society, but also for our defense, because we didn't talk about it, but now AI is becoming the defense industry, even if you don't want. And with the rapid evolution, we have the talent. The question is, how do we make it happen fast? And this is a question that is quite hard to answer.
How do Europeans build stuff?
At first, by discarding some myth. The myth of the man creating an empire in his backyard is an interesting myth, but it is a myth. We have to understand that in China, because we have been a lot talking about China, we've talked about DeepSeek a few months ago, saying, oh, it cost only $6 million. No, the infrastructure on which it was trained and based was $1 billion. So at this moment, states like the US, like China, like South Korea, have been having a harsh political industry in that field. We don't. We lack that kind of muscle, political muscles, and I've been working a lot at the with European Commission and different governments in Europe. We don't have that kind of strength to protect our industry, to do what the Americans have made, which is...
So there's a lot of public money, is what you're saying, in the US as well.
Exactly, and we don't have a European Buy Act, but they do have an American Buy Act. We don't have a Small Business Act, and they do have a Small Business Act for 73 years. And we are not helping our small companies to develop with the public procurements, where it's a basic in the US to develop. And all those companies, look at the conflict recently with the Pentagon. It's not only small companies, large companies are also building with the public money from the Pentagon, from the Department of Defense or of War, whatever, but from other agencies and states. And it's a huge motor for developing this ecosystem. We in Europe have not that kind of scaling up system that can be adapted with the help of government. We don't have a strategy at the political level, and it shows, especially those last 20 years, where we have, as a diplomat said, we have never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity, which is very bad for Europe.
We could go for another hour. We did not answer Marietta Sciacca's questions about also the dangers of AI for humanity more broadly. I hope you'll be back for that show. Bernard Benamou, I want to thank you. I want to thank Tariq Krim. Marietta Sciacca for being with us from Haarlem in the Netherlands. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.